Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second meeting of the working group for the merge request report widgets. And today we have a couple of things to talk about. So yeah, the one announcement I wanted to make was the merge request is finally merged. Thanks, Ryan, for hitting the button. It's already live on the handbook. So it's official, I guess. One of the things that I still have to check though, is I haven't talked to Tim Zalman yet. He's the sponsor. So I will try to, once he comes back from PTO, he's on PTO this week. Once he gets back, we'll validate whether this time works for him because he hasn't attended one yet. And I would like to have him over. So we'll see what that means. I've also talked to Daniel Tian, and he's still looking for a time slot that works for the majority of tech leads and APAC. But he's still watching the recordings and following along. So he's still aware of what's happening. We're just trying to make it a bit more inclusive so that we can have that secondary alternate slots, but we still don't have any proposals. So we'll just continue on with weekly on this time for the time being, and then we adjust when we need. Right, cool. Discussion items. The one thing that was left over from the merge request, and there was some good discussion over there. Pedro raised it and Rajan raised it as well, about the end date for the working group. And right now we merged it at the end of Q3. Now I think it would be worth having a little bit of a discussion, what that means, why is it better? Is there anything that we can choose that's more meaningful for the whole group? So yeah, anyone has thoughts on the date, please speak up. Let's put it that way. Who's in favor of having it in Q3 and why? At the end of Q3. I know there's someone who's in favor because
I'm waiting for Marcel to say something, but I'm going to break the silence.
I could be in favor of it.
I could feel that Marcel is looking at me. Yeah. I'm biased. I'm in favor of keeping it right to the end of quarter, but I think it would be interesting if we could assess what we will be able to deliver by the end of the quarter, if it's actually the start of implementation changes, right? Or the plan for what those changes would look like and how they will be executed. So that's my initial thought. Marcel?
Yeah, the advantage of Q3 is definitely the connection with the OKR. That's where I think the most logical piece comes from. I'm still not sure if the work on MR widgets will be finished by then, and if we should keep it more flexible, because OKRs are intentionally ambitious, and OKRs also don't expect 100% completion. So maybe we separate it from this. I'm open to either option. They both have advantages and disadvantages. But yeah, I think this is something where we can decide which option we go with, and either one will be fine.
Okay. I can voice my opinion. It's just one. I understand the alignment with the OKR. One of the things that I was looking at the exit criteria, Somebody can write as I speak. That would be awesome. Thanks. So we have to shepherd implementation and redesign of 10 extensions. The shared component follows the report, so basically supports the framework. The documentation reflects the capabilities of the shared component and ensure that there's a clear documentation written for extending the component. So while we have 4 exit criteria, one of them relates directly with the OKR. I agree with that. And the original reason why we considered doing a working group and not a shared OKR between different groups was exactly because we already anticipated that the effort would go beyond a quarter. so that would be my argument for pushing it at least at the end of the next quarter. That would be the end of the quarter 4, because it would allow us to, or maybe we can even do not bound to quarters. I mean, that's totally fine too. Because I do think after we finish the implementation of the widgets, and I think we're going to be operating on fixing the support of the framework, fixing the implementation of the widgets, and then updating the documentations as we go, because we all know how documentation takes a long time to get right. So I think there's probably going to be some cleaning up after we clear all of that from the lessons learned and all that. So that will drive the last bit of the exit criteria. So my proposal will be to be at the end of the quarter 4, just to have time to, complete the non 100% achievement of the OKR, and plus make sure that we have time to really hammer out the documentation and the process.
You got me convinced. I'm supportive.
Cool. Anyone else have thoughts?
What's the disadvantage of not setting a due date, an end date?
That is a good question. I don't have an answer.
I mean, because in this case, the OKRs already apply pressure on the assigned groups to deliver what they can, because it's ambitious, but we're all aware of what are the commitments and the responsibilities of each group and what they have signed up for. The working group itself kind of inherits the due dates and milestones and whatever we set for the deliverables. So if we, change issue dates, epics, milestones, the working group will also change. So we will have to keep changing the due date there. And as you said, that will be an ongoing effort that will probably outlive Q3 and will continue throughout Q4. And who knows if not more. So I'm okay with keeping it open, because I know that people are aware of the OKRs. So, but yeah.
I'll share my feeling, Pedro, and it's really just my gut feeling. I think it's the teams, they know that they have to deliver, right? But I think us having a set due date to facilitate the implementation or facilitate the progress within the stage groups would also help them stay accountable for that. Even if we say, as a UX department, right, that Q4 we're not going to have a KR for merge request widgets, because each group knows what they have to work on. Are they going to work on it? Sorry, folks, if you're watching this later. But I think I would also expect us to enter, do the groundwork, work on documentation, and here's what needs to be delivered to them, and in a way leave this effort, like exit, right, the room, so that the teams can also implement and not, keep waiting for us to give them an indication of what happens next and how. Anyways, rambling. Let me know if it makes sense. But yes, I would say I would appreciate, particularly knowing how the teams operate, to have a due date and being able to extend that if that's the case.
Yeah, I would be up for. It made me pause to think about not having a date, but not having a date could send the message that it will be going on for the whole year of 2022, and it's not. That's nobody here thinks that. So I think Hayana, you said it well. Like it provides accountability, and if we're not done by the end of quarter 4, we're probably slacking. I mean, unless there was some slippage or something that came up and we didn't anticipate or something. So I think having that is generous enough to provide ample capacity for, even given all the things that's happening. But I think it would still give us accountability to get it done. Does that make sense, Pedro?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think it's a communication issue. I'm with Marcel at this moment. I'm okay with having it and not having it. I see both points. So
Yeah, one piece that I think I also noticed when Rayana spoke is at the end, we might have specific groups that still have to work on their specific merge request widget, but this might be pushed out further. And I don't think a working group will then be 100% necessary. And if not, our own framework plus guidance from whatever designer is in that space who's collaborating with the framework will be enough. I think the most central and the core piece of this working group will be the framework and implementing this. And then after Q4, it's more up to each group to maintain and to make sure theirs doesn't break.
Okay. Okay, so I guess I can go ahead and create the update to move it to Q4 date. Thanks, everyone. I'm hogging the agenda, so please, if you have any thoughts or questions, add to the agenda so it's not just me. The quick question that I just came up in my mind is, should we have a working group label? I've seen them around in other working groups. It's good to capture like efforts of epics and issues that we end up creating, and then we can contextualize them into that, which will be tasks contextualized to this working group. Anybody has thoughts? Is it worthwhile? Is it harmful to have a label?
What would we use it for?
So anytime we have like epics so you already have a couple of, at least I anticipate 2 major epics. One is to add support to the framework on the component. The other is to implement the widgets themselves, which we already have. And I think it will be giving us a tool to quickly get an overview of things that are happening. And this always provides a way for people looking from the outside to see what's the activity of the working group. They find the label and they click on it and they see, oh, look at that, they're also doing this. Yeah, and that worked really well on the transient bugs. And in there we had 2 labels. One was the working group for the label for the working group tasks. It was update documentation, update this, update that. And there was the label that was the product of the outcome of that working group, which was every bug was a transient applies the label. In this case, I think we just need one for the working group. I think who can start there? Hannah?
Yeah, I'm sure we probably have other ways to track this, but I think in general, having a label, having a way to see and track the progress of especially the stage groups over the Q3, Q4 would be useful, right? Especially like what Marcel just said at the end, yeah, they're going to use the framework, but are we going to still be helping out and facilitating, and how do we track that? Yeah. So I'm pro labels in any case.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could have an epic, and if necessary sub-epics that align with the exit criteria, so that we can close out initiatives related to documentation and all of that. And you can see the tree of exactly what the working group is doing, and then close out the epic once the working group is complete.
Sounds really good. Are you volunteering?
No.
Anybody wants
just a
to
suggestion.
Anybody wants to create an epic about those X criteria? Then we can float around those.
I can create the main epic if you want, and then I'll leave it to you to create the sub epics and all of that. I know that Tim was already creating some issues for the implementation, I believe, so we can move those over there if necessary.
Okay, thanks, Pedro. We'll go from there. Anybody has thoughts on? I'm trying to avoid the Mr. Widget legacy thing. I'm trying to go for the expansion of it. Should we go for the full-on merge request report widgets one? Or are we going to keep the Mr. report widgets? I'm leaning towards the first. Any objections? All right, first it is. Thank you. Okay, So I just want to take the opportunity going on. We had a technical issue. We had already started some discussions. Thanks for everyone who contributed to the discussions. It feels like we have some consensus around some topics. One is about where he will live. So it feels like we're going to add it to just keep developing the component and the widgets within GitLab or GitLab project. We are going to do an emphasis on keeping them dumb so that they're easily reusable and that sort of thing. We're not going to allow slots initially so that we have a strong adherence to the UX framework, and we don't initially allow veering off of that. And then if somebody has needs or something that is not supported by the UX framework, we can assess whether we extend the framework or we add slots at that time. But initially, it doesn't make sense because we want everybody to adhere to the framework itself, and the framework is very widely encompassing to the needs that we have identified. So that's the two outcomes. There's still not a lot of activity on the last discussion, which is to break down into sub-epics and issues. This is going to have to happen. So I am asking for volunteers. If you want to help with this breaking down of the tasks of those two efforts, like adding support and implementing the widgets, please reach out. And especially there's simple widgets that we can start with. So once I start doing that, I will hunt down the team members of the working group, the members of the working group about those groups, and try to force them into volunteering. but anyway, I just wanted to say that that's on our plan to drive forward within the next week or so. Cool. Any updates since last meeting on this topic that you might have? Okay. Tim did say that he was going to take the lead on the process. And of course, we're still very young and very early, and he's out of office. So I don't expect any updates there. Anybody else has any updates or questions or thoughts or concerns that haven't been addressed?
I don't know if it's a question about the process, but I'm wondering, because you were asking for volunteers to help break down the work. Do you know if it's possible to have multiple engineers working on the main components, which I believe we're going to add to GitLab UI, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter. The main extension that exists today that Phil created, I believe the idea is to work on that so that it matches to the guidelines. Can multiple engineers work on that effort? Or do we need to assign someone specifically that will go through all of that on their own?
Phil, do you have any thoughts?
I would probably say a single person's probably better. I would hate the conflicts and stuff like that. So potentially just one person working on it. The problem is then if another team later down the line needs a slight change in it, I guess that should be handled by them instead.
Yeah, I've one thing that I know for sure is that it would be important to have one common maintainer reviewing it. And I since Phil started writing it, I would advise to be every work that goes into that component go through him as a review, at least. As to the author, as long as it's made together in clear communication. So that's one of the things that will become apparent as we start to break down. Because one of the things I want to take a look at, what are the parts of the UX framework that we can start driving into the component? And then some of them might be parallelizable, some of them are not. Like accessibility parts, you can't do that just alone. You can't just put accessibility on one person and the rest doesn't care. But certain parts, like let's make sure that we revise the icons. We can put a person on that. Let's make sure that we revise spacing. We can put another person on that as long as they're in communication. So I do think there's some, I think I agree with Phil on having one orchestrator, having a DRI for that car component, and I would suggest Phil just because he wrote it, and he, being the maintainer, would act as the reviewer part. But I don't think it's necessarily a done deal that only one person works on that component. I think some parts will be parallelizable, but I think that will become clear as we start to break down. Is that fair, Phil?
I think so. I think just the concern is eventually at some point conflicts are going to hit, and that's when it becomes not fun.
But we have to practice for after the working group dissolves, and then people evolving the component later on and stuff. So I think it'll be a good test for us to start playing around with that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that answers it. And yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, and I hope that we can parallelize some of the things. I wonder then if, without trying to push Phil under the bus, but I then wonder if, I mean, it's, as you said, it's not required that Phil does the implementation himself, but I agree that it's helpful for him to be the maintainer. But with all of the knowledge that he has of the current implementation, and given that he also provided some feedback on the framework that exists today in terms of designs, the design guidelines, I wonder if he wouldn't be the most appropriate person to do that breakdown work right now. And if we shouldn't make time for him to work on that so that he feels comfortable with his other responsibilities. But this is just, you know, again, not trying to push you, Phil, under the bus.
I'm totally happy to take it. It's more Andre on my schedule and stuff. So
we'll group up. We'll group up, and I think it's useful to have another, at least another element of somebody who will be consuming it, and another person is like a designer with us on that exercise. So I'll probably think about having a sync session where Phil will be driving that part, and yeah, for sure.
Cool, thanks.
I do want to emphasize, though, while we're working on this part of adding support to the framework of the component, there's plenty of work that can start already on rewriting the simple widgets that I talked about, those 2 threads. So that won't be the only engineering effort happening at one time. I'm thinking mostly about those. I can't remember which ones are simpler widgets. What would you say are the simpler widgets? Marcel, you told me about some.
Looking back, I think at least 2 or 3 of the testing widgets were very similar and had very simple data, at least from the what is being displayed perspective. I don't know if the data loading in is exactly working in the same kind of way, but at least they look very similar from what we can see in the framework.
That's what we want. I think those are great candidates testing. So I'll zoom in my crosshair there. So that's what I'm saying. Like, we can start right away, starting to rewrite those, and even if they don't look exactly the same, they will once we add the support to the UX framework, to the component. But I think it's in a state where we can kick that off, and I think that effort will feed back into the updating of the component, of the core component.
Yeah, I think the one I had go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say the top of mind, quickly, I remember, could be code quality, browser performance, and accessibility. And there's also another one, load testing or something like that.
Yeah, it's super simple. It has pretty much nothing to show.
Yeah, so code quality will be more complex, but there is browser and low performance and metrics and accessibility. So we have like 4 that are basically just straight up lists of what is returned from the API. The only one that's really complex from testing is the test summary. Code quality has been passed off to the SaaS team, but we're happy to help there since we just barely pass it off to them.
Yep.
That's great.
I think the one difference also about the metrics one is that we now have groups and new, changed, and unchanged. New, changed, and unchanged, I think. Whereas the accessibility browser performance and load performance, I think, are just items below each other. So they are not going into the third level.
Got it. Okay.
If I remember correctly, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah,
I'm also
metrics
checking
does
right
have
now.
like change and unchanged. That's the, yeah.
Yeah.
So the shared component we have now currently doesn't have that change and unchanged sections. Okay. Yeah, so we can just do the other ones. So 3 of them. And to just confirm, we're good to just start whenever we can on those.
I was going to invite you, Scott, to lead that thread. And as soon as Pedro create that major epic, we can create a sub epic is there an epic already to implement the widgets?
There's an epic. I put it on the technical issue. I'll link it in the agenda.
Thanks. But yes, my answer is start right away implementing and re-implementing this. I think it's fair to establish expectations that we might hit a snag and we might hit a place where, oh, the widget doesn't do this still, or the component doesn't do this still. Let's add support to it. But still, it's important to start pushing the boundaries of what it can do without really paying too much attention to, which icons are being used or the spacing, because those will be the other effort ongoing on the other side. But as early as you can start, the better, I think. And rally around any help that you might need from ICs and other teams as well that might be able to help if you need. But I would invite you to drive that forward, Scott.
Yeah, I can drive that forward. And we've had some volunteers from like Jose and Peyton to help us out.
Amazing. Do keep us posted here on the weekly chats. Do you want to be present on the? Sorry, Phil, go ahead.
So the first issue I think we're going to come up with in the implementation that we've currently got in the extension is that we don't support polling, whereas a lot of the widgets now need to be polled for data. So that's the first hurdle to get over.
Oh yeah, I'll check to see which of these widgets poll. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they actually do poll, because I think what they basically do is get 2 reports and compare them and then just list the comparison.
Yeah.
All right. I was going to ask Scott, when we start to break that down, do you want to have someone on your team join us, or you yourself, to break down the work?
The work for.
So we're going to start working. We're going to looking at the 2 efforts. One is the adding the support to the component. We're going to break down the parts of the framework. So icons, spacing, all that stuff. Do you feel it's valuable to have someone on your team join us, or will you be focused on consuming that and we'll be focusing on adding support to the widget?
I think there'd be value in having someone join, whether that's me.
I'll ping you and then I'll let you decide.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sweet. All right. Exciting. Any more thoughts?
If anyone is in a hurry for that main epic, feel free to create it, because my computer might need to be reinstalled the Mac OS. So let's see.
Okay. We'll figure it out. I'll probably create it. Thanks, Pedro. All right, that's it. We're at time. Thanks everyone for your time, and see you next week.